We broadcast on 94.4 in Nairobi. We are in Malindi, 97.7 in Nyeri, 90.9 in Kisumu, 102.5, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 in Eldoret, and Mombasa, 87.9. We also live stream to the world on www.spicefm.co.ke and Spice FM KE on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Welcoming our audience on KTN Home. This is the second hour of the show. In the room is Siti Muga Nduoko, and I'm Eric Latif. Shortly, we'll be joined by the Nakuru Senator, Susan Kihika, to discuss the bill that she's proposed, and it's already gone through to the third reading of Parliament. It's in the Senate, and this is the Reproductive Health Care Bill 2019. Mm-hmm. This bill is, when you hear reproductive, the first person that you expect to react is religious organizations.
And that is exactly what has happened.
And right on cue, when it was published, when it went through public participation and public debate, this bill elicited a lot of feedback from the religious organizations. A number of things that it's proposing, it's quite progressive in terms of what it's proposing. It's basically saying, let's open up our conversation. First of all, let's look at adolescents and ensure that we give them access to age-appropriate reproductive health services. Which includes counseling, which includes teaching them about unsafe abortions and all this. Now, the tricky words here include unsafe abortion.
Abortion, just that word. Bad word.
Bad word already.
Yes,
when
safe. Just,
when they hear that. And then talking about now sex education. So it's introducing some sense of sex education to the adolescents. And then also it has some provisions on the abortion bill itself. And it says, so what is this that we're going to discuss about abortion?
I think all of this comes on the premise that certain things are happening anyway. And I think, unfortunately, there's a reluctance to accept the fact that the age over time has become lower and lower when it comes to some of these now contentious issues that some organizations seem to be bringing out, especially the religious organizations. Just those words that you've mentioned: abortion, age-appropriate sexual lessons and counseling. And then also when you want to talk about pregnancy, the truth of the matter, whether you want to accept it or not, religion or not, is that the age bracket has been lowered over time. More and more younger people are getting into such practice. It doesn't matter how we want to look at it. And unfortunately, where I see all of this coming from is that there's a reluctance to accept the reality on the ground that this is happening. Now, whereas it would be a good thing to take the bill in its entirety, what has happened is that certain groups have taken certain parts of it and decided that this is what they're going to run with and say, we are not going to accept this. Whereas there could be some merits that are being thrown out the window, a typical baby bathwater situation. And it's being, that one contentious issue is being looked at and then used to ascribe either damnation or acceptance to the entire bill.
I look at it, in addition to what you're saying, this way. It is yet an opportunity to actually hash out all these matters that people may believe in firmly and their perspective on this particular subject of reproductive health. Because when something raises this sort of debate, it means it has challenged what we may refer to as the norm.
Yeah.
What people have held to be sacrosanct. And it's saying, can we look at this again, please? And I think I would add to that conversation and say, yes, let us look at it again. Let us discuss it in greater detail, because this subject of reproductive health didn't start in the 21st century. This debate has gone on for the longest time. And believe me, people have shifted, have changed, have had different perspectives. People have gone into camps, groups, there have been labelings. It's not going to end.
No, it isn't. And I think a lot of these conversations need to be fueled by the reality on the ground. Look at what we saw in the last 2 months, just for example, in terms of the so-called unwanted pregnancies that have become rife amongst young girls across the country. From county to county, everybody has their numbers that they had been reporting or that had been recorded over time. So what does that mean? People are engaging in sexual activity, for example, number one. Look at the numbers of unsafe abortions that are being had around the country, whether you want to like it or not, whether you want to admit it or not, it is happening. So if you have a girl who's getting pregnant between the ages of 9 and 14, what does that mean? She's engaging in sex. It's clear. So I think, unfortunately, the discussion or the debate has always been had from a religious point of view, from a social point of view, from a leadership, governmental point of view, with blinders on. And like you said, it's time to have the conversation now with those proverbial blinders off. Because if we don't, how many people continue to suffer? When we look at things like, young girls being pregnant and then going in to have their babies, and they then continue to suffer from things like fistula, rife in some parts of the country. How would it be if we now, peppered that with some bit of information? And I think this is what this is trying to do. Open up the conversation so we can talk about things. And it's necessary to do. If you have to say that thousands of girls in one county have been recorded or reported to be pregnant or, in the last 4 months, it means something. So wouldn't you rather have them go in armed with information? And I think this is where the conversation is coming from.
There was a time when if a young lady was unfortunate enough not to have sex, but to actually get pregnant, and you were still in school, that was the end of your education.
The end of your life.
Gone, finished.
Yeah, yeah.
And the argument has always been the young men or the men involved always got away scot-free. Okay? That has changed. Young women have been known to get pregnant and have been known to go back to school. I know because I was a head teacher myself. I know. And this is something you had to look at as a parent and say, okay, what is in the best interest of this person? And this is really one of the things that this particular bill seems to look at. What are the rights of this particular individual? And then brings in the other question of the rights of the unborn child.
Child, right.
There's that other debate. And then the decision-making process. Who holds the upper hand in the decision-making process? In the field of HIV and AIDS, when someone was HIV positive, and it was clear it hadn't been brought about as a result of something they inherited through their birth, or someone already had a child, they were called mature minors. A term was coined to accommodate them so that they could receive the same help and be accorded the same rights as people who had reached the consensual age. Because it was the realistic thing to do. This person already has a child. So, by virtue of having this child, the role that they play in the life of this child that they have born is the role of an adult. So if you want to assist them, you must accord them that treatment. Now, what this meant, and this is where the debate arose, is where do their parents come in? It's a debate that still goes on, by the way, because when you talk of confidentiality, how on earth do you accommodate the parents of this child, who is then at that point in time also a parent? A parent.
Exactly. And, then asking yourself, where do they cease being a child? Because the assumption is that for the period of time that this individual is a child, there are certain provisions or protections that parents then are the ones offering. So, and also decision making on behalf of this individual. So when that time lapses, then you would assume that they make these decisions then for themselves. Many parents up until this point are thinking that even until the age of 25, they don't want these individuals making these decisions for themselves, because they feel that, however they have seen them over time, whether they're ready or not, then still is their decision to make.
See, this is where now you intermingle a social construct with a legal one. Who has the right to make the decision? Socially, you never stop being a parent. That is the truth. But if you're talking about legally, at the age of 18, that individually referred to as a child can make the decisions for themselves, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it.
I think there are also calls, just looking at this entire bill and looking at the discussions that are being had around it, there is a call for, if such a thing can be, that a lot of religious organizations, a lot of religious leaders, unfortunately, now get off the moral high horse and take into consideration the reality on the ground. Let's just be honest. Even the young people that fill churches, for example.
If religious organizations climb down the moral high ground, who shall be left up there?
What I'm saying is this. The fact remains that as we are saying, let's not talk about this. Remove it from the bill completely, right? Take it out of the bill. Let's not even have the discussion. Guess what? These young people, the ones who fill church every Sunday, right? The ones who are attending the youth groups or whatever, are having sex anyway. That's the truth.
So we legalize it anyway?
No. They're having these conversations amongst themselves. So what I'm saying is, like we said, now I say there are very many parts of this bill that have merit. But I am saying open up the arena for conversation so that because they're engaging in this, whether you want to deem it right or wrong is not the issue. But can they have informed discussion?
So how does the law open this up for discussion? Look, this is part 7 of the bill, section 32. The national government shall collaborate with county governments to ensure that adolescents have access to adolescent-friendly reproductive health services. What are these services that are age-appropriate? Mentorship program, spiritual and moral guidance, counseling on abstinence, consequences of unsafe abortion, and sexually transmitted infections and HIV/AIDS, substance and drug abuse, training in livelihood and life skills, vocational trainings, and such other health services as the Cabinet Secretary shall determine. A healthcare provider from whom reproductive health services are sought by an adolescent shall refer the adolescent to a qualified person for the provision of the necessary services. Okay? Now, this is where the religious organizations, for example, are reading and saying, look, just looking at the wordings of some of these clauses. Number one, we are saying, yes, we shall introduce sex education to the children. And according to what the evangelicals said in their press conference, they were saying this kind of sex education is basically saying that we shall teach our young boys and girls that sex is good for recreation.
Reproduction.
Not reproduction. Enjoying.
Okay.
This is what they translate it to. And then they also say, when you say that we are teaching children about consequences of unsafe abortion, basically then if you teach about unsafe abortion, then you shall also have to talk about what is safe abortion.
And that's a conversation that they don't want to have. But what I'm saying
what is safe abortion? Now, if you start promoting to this young mind,
you're giving them the option of abortion.
You're giving them that option. And then listen to this. A healthcare provider from whom reproductive health services are sought by an adolescent shall refer the adolescent to a qualified person for the provision of this service.
So essentially, the problem is that you're making the option available to young people. You're making the option available to them. So then you want to push it forward and say, so what they're going to do then is engage in any kind of sexual activity because they know the option of then going ahead to procure a safe abortion then becomes readily available to them. And that is essentially what they're trying to avoid.
This is where now this is where the crux of the matter is, because this is what they're arguing against. They're saying, look, the way we are wording this is we're introducing abortion through the back door. Already, we have fought abortion in very many other ways. So, for instance, there's the provision here of on abortion itself specifically. Let me get to it. Termination of pregnancy. This is clause 26, part 5 of the bill. It seeks to allow a trained health professional to terminate a pregnancy if, now we know that there are two provisions in the Constitution for termination of a pregnancy. One of them is when there is need for emergency treatment. And the second one is the pregnancy would endanger the life or health of the mother. There's a third one that's being introduced in this bill. If there exists a substantial risk that the fetus would suffer from a severe physical or mental abnormality that is incompatible with life outside the womb. If you think that this child will be born and they'll have some physical or mental abnormality, you can terminate this pregnancy.
If you think, or if it's tested.
You know, then you enter the realm of the right to life.
Yeah. And this is where now the religious organization went straight into that one and said, look, here what you're saying is that we are going to be killing children who have a disability even before they are born.
Even before they get an opportunity to be able to fight the odds, which is what a lot of have. And so now what they're calling this is intentional killing of human life.
Yes.
That's what they've called it, which is unacceptable.
You know,
it's been a global raging debate for decades.
It has, because essentially what you're saying is this, that you have the right to select or predetermine the sort of human beings who should inhabit this earth. And that they must be free of any infirmity, physical or otherwise. Essentially, you've given yourself a godlike quality. That one, religious organizations will fight you.
Tooth and nail.
Oh, they will not give any quarter.
Does it make sense, though?
Yes, it does. Their fight makes a lot of sense.
Not the fight, the inclusion of this clause. If you think about, okay, so what is the intention, for example, of the drafter of this bill, Susan Kihika? If we are talking about we can terminate a pregnancy if there exists a substantial risk that the fetus would suffer from there's severe physical or mental abnormality that is incompatible with life outside the womb.
What you're saying...
Substantial, severe, incompatible.
Yes. You then bring into debate the advances that we've made in science. You then bring into debate the mitigation that the world of medicine has brought into being over the years, and how it is that things that people are born with, infirmities that were considered to be damning, have been reversed. You then bring into debate, again, as I said, you are now playing God. You see? If it is a condition that is widespread, remember that story that we highlighted regarding the lead poisoning that was taking place in a village, Uhuru Owino, in Changamwe.
Yeah.
People died. 30 children died. 20 adults passed away. Lead poisoning. Now, in such a situation, you know what was causing the problem. They got to know it later, right?
Yeah.
And even then, there would be a serious debate. Are you dealing with the consequence or are you dealing with the cause? What brought it about?
Yeah.
If this young girl, remember the one where the debate usually also rages, but not is when the life of the mother is in danger. Okay? If you're talking about a young person, a very young person, expecting, their lives are likely to be in danger. Because much as they can conceive, but the bodies may not have matured to the point where they can actually safely bring forth a child. That may be a problem. But it's a debate that has to go on. You know why? Experts have to weigh in, people who actually deal specifically in this particular area, the advances that have been made, because the discussions are not beginning in Kenya. Oh, they've been had for the longest possible time, because when dealing with pregnancy, why not talk about ensuring people don't get pregnant? Then you meet another problem. So you're telling our children to just have sex.
Essentially, that's what you're doing.
Why the debate is important is because it brings forth a certain reality that many parents may not be ready to face. Now, these lovely, wonderful children of yours who you go to church every day may be having sex and you have absolutely no clue.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just like you did and your parents had no clue.
Yes,
I mean, it's not like it's anything new.
They're not inventing it. Yes. So, shouldn't you then look at this, the possibility of saying, oh, look, it is likely to happen, so why don't we equip them adequately?
Inform them.
Yes.
Inform them so that they're aware what they're doing.
Yes.
If they happen to now wade into said waters, inform them so that they're armed with what they need to go through. Because unfortunately, if you look at the studies that have been done, a lot of cases then, end in death and in irreversible situations on bodies of young men and women because of the fact that they're doing things that they don't have any information about. So, because it's like the situation of, okay, where we have reached so far, you would rather give them the information that they need.
It's not just information, eh?
No, it isn't.
It's services. What does services mean? That you're saying that these teenagers can
Medical
actually go...
facilities, for example.
Yep. And birth control.
Because it's happening, man. It's happening.
So we are saying basically that let's allow our children to go and buy birth control, procure birth control.
Let there be a safe haven. Let there be a youth-friendly center where all these discussions that we're having can be had. I know for a fact that, again, with the advent of HIV, youth-friendly centers were thought of and even actualized in certain parts of the country. It's within the hospital, but just for the youth. And it was not labeled HIV. Any health matter that the youth had, they would go there. Yes. And there was a deliberate attempt to ensure that the sort of people who actually work there, 1 year volunteers who are youth, members of youth groups, people who are clearly young, and even the healthcare providers are people who you could consider youthful, people whom they could resonate and identify with. Yes. And I do not have the details of how successful they have turned out to be over the years, but I do know that they were welcomed. And problems that previously were very difficult to resolve within the normal flow of healthcare provision, the problems were lessened considerably, because the youth then knew that they had a place which was their own. No one who was not considered a youth would ever go to that particular center.
Were there adolescents going to that center?
Yes, there were. There were. Let me explain what they put in the center that I know of. They made sure, for instance, that they had available something like an internet cafe where you could actually go, you had access to internet. A small place where you could find reading material.
Yep.
A pool table.
Yep.
All right? A small room where if you wanted to have discussions with your youth group, you could have. Meaning, they tried to provide it was genuinely a center where
it was a rec center, essentially.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Were there condoms provided?
Yes.
For all age groups?
Yes.
We're breaking the law.
No, we're not breaking the law. Within the hospital compound, there were free condoms being provided. There's a dispense.
Yeah.
Anybody can go and nobody would stop you. So, within the health facility, such things were provided. If it was a standalone youth center, that argument would hold water, and you'd say, but the law doesn't quite allow this. But within a hospital setting, no.
Well, this is the thing. I think, times have changed, whereby, previously the church church and religious organizations could be the ones that would lead these conversations. Time has changed, because guess what? These urges whereby you have hormones on legs and things, like this happening.
On speed dial.
On speed dial, rather, not even just on legs. Amongst young people, they're walking around exploring, discussing amongst themselves, discovering things that, maybe would be a little bit better in terms of an experience if they were equipped and if they had the right information. So where I'm coming from is I'm saying, look, because of the fact that they are engaging. If they put on their proverbial halo for you when they're in your home as your children, trust me, there's a time where they take it off. And you wouldn't be able to see it. If they come and they sit in the pews on Sunday, for example, guess what? There's a whole 6 other days when they're not sitting in that place, and you don't know what they're doing. So I think it would be irresponsible, and I can go ahead and use that word. It would be irresponsible not to equip or inform. And look, you have adults today who probably wish that they had been given the right information, that they would have had access to those services when they were younger, and maybe they would not have made the decisions that they made, or maybe their experience would be different. And I'm telling you, talk to adults across the divide, across spheres. They would tell you, yeah, well, actually, I found out a lot of what I found out on my own. And I wish that I would have had the information or the services to give me a better experience.
You see,
Let's take a quick break, Siti and Ndu. Let's take a break. At 25 minutes after 7, we are discussing this very controversial reproductive health care bill. The sponsor of this bill, the Senator Susan Kihika, will be joining us shortly because it has very many provisions in it. And remember, we broadcast on Spice FM 94.4 in Nairobi, Mombasa 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, Nakuru 96.0, Eldoret 96.7, 90.9 in Nyeri, Malindi 97.7, and also on our live stream www.spicefm.co.ke, Spice FM KE on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. And also this hour on KTN Home. In the room, my name is Eric Latif. We have CT Muga and Nduoko. We are discussing reproductive health care, and especially for now focusing on the adolescents and the young adults, right? And you were saying the experiences that you saw with, the dealing with HIV is that there would be provision for youth-friendly centers, for HIV.
Pregnancy has a very high stigma quotient, especially among that particular age group. So a youth-friendly center would help mitigate against this. Somewhere you are just among younger people and people who you feel will not judge you. The ethos around reproductive health, this is me being polite and saying, the ethos around sex, having it and discussing it in this country often borders on the hypocritical. And when you throw in religion, it doesn't border. It now becomes full-blown hypocritical because the practice and the preaching of it are not necessarily in tandem. But the reality now brings us to the discussion that we're having now. Young people will have sex some will get pregnant. So what do we do? And this is not something that is happening in the 21st century. It has happened from antiquity. Because that age that they are at, that's when the system is pumping. And there are things that they are beginning to figure out.
System is
Man, there's energy, there's everything.
Everything.
Yes, it's popping up, and it's
and curiosity.
Yes, and if you do not take the time and the bother to ensure that there is a clear understanding of these things, they'll be educated by YouTube. And by their friends who've
And
watched
their
and
friends.
who have read and understood YouTube the way they understand it.
Yeah.
This is exactly what I'm saying. Because
So
here's
what
an
you're
opportunity-
advocating is
an
sex
opportunity-
education.
Yes, proper sex education. An opportunity has been provided to give this information. You'd rather look. The truth of the matter is, this is where you would be if we have some people in society right now who are saying, no, don't talk about it. What are you doing? You're just covering a problem and then giving it time to really simmer and then erupt.
Okay.
So here you have an opportunity to then be part of the solution, because they're not going to stop because you say, let's not talk about it. You sweep it under the carpet,
So
it
what
still
is sex
remains
education?
dirt. You sweep it under the carpet, it still remains dirt. So look, do you know there are young girls today, to my horror, who believe they got pregnant because somebody touched them like this. Really even understanding the process. Because once you understand the nitty-gritty of something, then you're able to make a decision about whether you want to be involved with it or not. Most people, you'd be shocked. 2020, where we are.
So how should
people
this
don't
education be
understand what's
delivered?
going on.
Is it in school? Is it in churches? Is it at home? I mean, what format?
I believe
should
that
this
whatever resource that we have available right now should be used.
What
It
has-
should be used.
what
I'm
has-
not saying in Sunday school on Sunday morning, then you start now having sexual education for young people. That's not what I'm saying. But I believe that there's
You can
certain-
actually have sexual education by introducing the biblical perspectives of it at an appropriate age.
At an
depending
appropriate age, yes.
So that's the biblical aspect. What I was going to say is that it has been found over time that whenever we are talking about a solution, it's not, as we call it, the magic bullet. It's a multi-pronged approach.
everybody has to be involved.
You are going to ensure that there's a curriculum that deals with it and the content is appropriate. Then you will ensure that the religious organizations have their say. Parents are supposed to have their say.
And it has to be true. Do you
Yes.
see what I'm saying? It has to be true. It has to be a true representation of the process. I read a book, again, to my horror. John smiled at Mary, and a year later they had a baby. I mean, this is the practical stuff that we're talking about. And that is something that is being taught in a school to actual human beings.
Age appropriate. What age are those? Is the audience for that book?
It's in primary school.
What age?
What's the age of primary school?
Well, it starts from 7 to 11.
Yeah, exactly. So
Not
across
11
that
actually,
age.
a lot. Yeah. 7
13
to what?
even.
13.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Still, it is not true.
There's a difference between a 6-year-old and a 13-year-old.
That is okay.
Oh, massive.
Oh, of course there is.
So what age is this book targeting? The one for
I believe
John
that-
and Mary,
I
standard one?
believe.
It's still not true. It is still not true.
Yeah, but the birds and the bees are taught to younger kids.
You know something? When we reflect our own conflicts about this particular matter and then transfer it to our children, it becomes an issue.
It does.
So, yes, because for most of our people, I'm talking about Africans in this.
It's not something you talk about.
No, it's at night,
In the night.
the dark,
If you
under
can
a
even-
blanket,
if you can
even in
switch
hot
off-
weather.
Switch off the moon if
Yes,
you can.
yes. So, if you start from that perspective, all right, and then you throw in the religious understanding of it, you know, these things actually, all of them have to be brought to the table for discussion. Some sort of, you may not necessarily agree,
Yeah.
but at least there'll be a greater understanding.
You may not agree. It may make you uncomfortable.
But there's a greater understanding.
But you would come out, I think, with a better understanding and be more informed.
That is information. But when you come to other services, now, if you're telling adolescents, because now this particular bill is dealing specifically with adolescents, all right? How do you want to conduct this training? How do you want to give out this sex education?
I wouldn't start there.
And how do you...
I would start by asking myself, do a little what they call baseline work or formative work. Find out what these people actually know. You know, this thing of starting from the top of saying this is what they need, you'll miss the boat completely. You actually need to understand primarily what this age group knows and understands. Then these interventions that you have in mind can be tailored to be appropriate for that age. Otherwise, you will be talking to yourself. It is your idea of what these young people want. It's your idea of what you think is appropriate. It's like choosing clothes for them. It's your idea of how they should go about this thing. Man, in this day and age, when you have other sources of information competing with yours, please find out what they know.
Find out what they know.
And find out what they'd like. And find out, even take it further, how they'd like this communicated to them, because they do have an idea. They're not blank. We are the ones who take these people to school. We are the ones who give them ideas. We are the ones who give them information, or we enable them to understand information or to access it. So if you don't understand this pool of information that you've enabled your children, your adolescents to gather, how then can you say that you have an appropriate schema that you're trying to apply and that is useful to them? How?
I'm going to open the phone lines for this conversation, 0719-012-600. And the issue right now is sex education for the adolescents and sex services, reproductive health services for the adolescents. What is it that you think would be appropriate, and how should it be conducted in terms of offering this education? Is it school? Is it curriculum? Is it at home? Is it... and because the truth of the matter is, CT, like you've said, yes, these young people are engaging in sexual activity. As we have seen recently, many are engaging in sexual activity, and especially for the girls, they end up pregnant. What is it that we want to see happening? Is it about giving education? Do we need a law to come in and deal with these issues of morality? Because it's about morality and parenthood. Others would argue this way. Yep. So let's hear what they have to say. Masiga in Chuka, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, thank you. You're well?
I am well. I'm grateful for this topic today. And I want to point out something that it's true. This conversation needs to be an ongoing debate every day. And then COVID has made it a little bit difficult to deal with this issue. For once, these kids are accessing phones, downloading pornographic materials, and watching them. Trust me, yesterday I was distributing condoms, and I came across a group of young men seated together. What were they doing? Walikuwa wanaangalia some pornographic things. So
how young?
Sometimes secondary school kids.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the government in the later years had this thing called youth-friendly service centers. So they were almost constructed all over the country, but very few are functional. Very few are functional. So at least the government had all these things prospected in the later years. It should make them practical as from yesterday.
Thank you very much, Masiga. That's some very good insights that you're giving us this morning. Well, this is the Situation Room, 0719-012-600. We are seeking your opinion on this particular topic that we are discussing this morning. How is it that we should conduct this sex education? Simon in Mombasa. Simon, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. So,
Simon, you're a youth counseling psychologist.
Yes. And I'm also a university student at the University of Nairobi.
Okay.
And the reality on the ground is that youth are engaging in sexual activities, but very few understand what it entails to do success. And youth, whenever they share this information, other mislead each other, courtesy of fake news on the internet.
Yep.
And whatever I've had you guys speaking, equipping and informing youth, it's okay. That is what should be happening. But what is currently happening is what we should be focused on. And my take is simple. In as much as teenage pregnancies are on the rise, HIV and AIDS also is on the rise. The only thing which will save the Kenyan youth is for parents to have a mind shift, a paradigm mind shift, in that once their mindset are to be known that they are of concern to the children that they have, these children are to be well informed and to make right decisions. So very few people open up whenever we speak to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. John in Nairobi, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I love the conversation you guys are having right now.
Thank you.
However, I feel like we are starting this conversation from the very top. We should look at it right from the bottom. At what point did we lose the focus before even we introduce this conversation of having sex education?
Where did we lose the focus, John?
I think the focus, we lost it from a point of how are we being responsible parents, and then how do we teach our children to be more responsible? In the sense that we look at our modern world right now, our parents will allow our children, I know we are growing in learning, and we let our children access online detail without even scrutinizing what really are they watching or are they accessing. Then we want to let other people to rectify a mistake that we breed at home.
Could I ask you something, please?
Yes.
You say we lost it. At what point did we actually have it?
Let's compare the generations. I think it's important we look back to the generations when our children were friends to their parents. We had a very close relationship with our parents, not because they never had or they had a lot of time for us. It's because they treasured their presence.
Actually,
right now, our
parents if you talk about parents of an age gone by, I belong to that age group, it's because they didn't have very much else competing with their time. The only competition you had was probably a radio. If you really tried, was a TV. That's it.
Yes, but look at it, our current generation. Let's talk of the 21st century parents. As we compete with our resources, as we compete with our economical factors, why do we treasure a lot of presence other than presence? Because it's out of the presence that we'll be able to have certain conversations with our children. Do we have that time for our children?
Good points. Good points, John. Thank you very much for that point. Catherine in Nyeri, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm wondering one thing. On the moral grounds of this issue, as a Christian, as a Catholic, I remember when I was a youth, we used to be told clearly what the Sixth Commandment means and the repercussions. Why aren't we talking of it is fornication? Because the media is so powerful. If it was used to promote abstaining, it would work. In fact, if there's something that has failed us in this country and the world over is the media.
Okay.
We just promote things that are so highly sexualized. I work with youth. I mentor them at a university. And what I notice is when we give them alternative activities to engage their idle and free time with, they turn around completely.
So basically, you don't give them any information about sex.
We talk about sex clearly. No. And we also tell them that it is a sin. Fornication. What happened to fornication? What happened to us calling a sin, surely? Yes. So there's that bit that we are failing.
And
we are getting so comfortable.
Because then you start to dance on the edge of things like rights and people's beliefs. How do you take into consideration those other individuals who don't necessarily feel that they would be doing anything wrong?
What the first thing is, as churches, let me explain what I understand. When we talk to the youth, we do not go hiding what is using condoms and contraceptives. We explain everything. But then we also tell them it is a sin to engage in these things at this particular time. And I remember that worked for me because it does not mean that you do not end up failing. Because I also would fail. I would have sex. I was in college. But then my conscience would condemn me and I would turn around and do the right thing.
Okay, so
and
there's
especially
information
on abortion, and whether it's safe abortion is it's being called, is still killing another human being. What is the human right for that child? Because what would keep us away to not wanting to do sex is imagining that I may conceive, and if I abort, I am killing someone. Why aren't we putting the sins as sins? Because it works. I have seen it work. I have some 25-year-old virgin youths right now.
Yeah.
And I remember it was so disappointing. A guy not telling that lady, how are you a virgin at 25? And she broke down. We are even stigmatizing those who are doing the right thing. It's like doing the wrong thing is the right thing nowadays. Yes.
There's something that is often referred to, even in our constitution, as a separation of powers.
Yes.
What you say about the media may have some weight, but it isn't entirely true. Because
you have some heavy weight.
We do.
Let's just call it some weight. People listen to you.
Believe me, it is some. Because there is a limit to how much even the media can influence. People have very many other avenues that influence them, depending on the inclination. But that was not really what I wanted to do. What I wanted to say was this.
Yeah.
If the religious organizations do not play their part in ensuring that they pass on this message, then how exactly would you want the media to assist you?
And do you know how I mean you're so powerful? They listen to you like God. What you guys support, that is what they support. Like the lady who is speaking right now, whatever she's saying, the next meeting I have with those youth, I'll be told, you see? You are told to get out of your moral high horses. They listen to every word you say and they use it as a Bible. So if someone is supporting the right values, being very clear that whether it is safe or unsafe, we are killing someone.
All right. So now it comes to the issue of values.
Yes.
We
need to mix the two. The leaders and the media need to put it very clearly.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for your views. Justus in Kilifi, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Eric and Tim and Titi.
We are well, thank you. How are you?
I'm okay. I want to make a very brief contribution. I think the problem with adolescent and youth sexuality is the adult. The problem is not with the youth.
There you go.
It's the adult. We are the ones who are, to borrow the lady's phrase, sitting on some sort of moral high ground without appreciating the fact that the ground under us has shifted.
There you go.
I remember when we were in high school, there was this magazine called True Love and Ram. That was our pornography. We could kind of get the picture, the explicit pictures of beautiful ladies. That's the farthest we could go. And so the point I'm trying to make is that every generation has their form of pornography to enjoy.
So where is the failure of the adults then?
The adults, because we are busy prescribing the traditions we had, the standards we had, we are not adjusting them. Secondly, we have professionalized talking to young people. It's no longer about appreciating their growth, the realities they are growing with, but we are trying to make professional standards. Like now what you have just read, the Act. The Act, you can, even when you read the bill, when you read it, you can see adult morality. You can feel religious indignation about things the youth are doing, the youth are thinking, the youth are talking. Why don't we sit back and ask whether the act of sex itself, is it the ultimate sin? When we want to conceptualize this youth, decadency, sexual failures, consequences, is the final act of having sex the starting point? Because everybody's talking about how do we prevent risky sex, how do we prevent youth from having sex?
You've gone philosophical on us just as now.
What exactly happens? Because you can have safe sex and you walk around not pregnant. So are you okay? Are you a good youth? Somebody may just have sex once in a while, even the 25-year-old virgin she's talking about, and she becomes pregnant. Is she therefore being morally decadent? What I want to say is this, the last thing is that we also need to look at this young people and sexuality by focusing on adults who create the conditions under which these people actually have that risky sex. Because you can, I suspect, in many of these cases where young people are pregnant, it's not teenage to teenage pregnancy which is predominant. It's adult to young people.
Justus, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Frederick in Mombasa, thank you for holding on for such a while.
Oh, yeah.
How are you, Frederick?
Yeah, I'm good. How is the team? Eric, it has been a while since
Yes,
I
it
called
has.
you.
How have you been?
Very well, thank you.
I'm good. I'm safe. I'm actually in Mombasa still.
Okay.
And I'm COVID free. Yeah.
Fantastic. Remain that way, and others around you.
It's good to hear. Talk about what we are discussing today, Frederick.
Exactly. Actually, it's a good topic. And I've listened to what the callers earlier have said. And mine is to start from maybe a lower or a different point. Starting from the issue of reproductive health. You know, sex is the apex, is the end.
Yep.
Then now the repercussions from there start. But as parents or the community or the society, at what point do we start talking of reproductive health? For example, you have a teenager who has just started the menstrual cycle. Can the fathers be able to talk to their daughters about their health, the issue of menstrual cycle? If it cannot be happening at that time, then that's where challenges start to grow, and we cannot arrest them.
It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Joining us now in the room on the hot seat is Nakuru Senator Susan Kihika. Thank you very much for joining us, and good morning.
Good morning to you. I'm glad to be here, and I look forward to a very productive a few minutes, maybe 1 hour, maybe.
Productive, eh? Productive. So now your buzzword anyway is productive. Reproductive health care. Productive conversations.
I see you.
I see. We introduced this bill for a bit, and we talked about some of the highlights, the issue of adolescents and getting healthcare access to healthcare services. There's the issue of the new clause that you've proposed there for abortion, when abortion can be allowed, and many others. And you, of course, know what has raised controversy around this. But before we go into the controversy for the next 2.5 minutes, what made you think of this particular bill? What's the need?
Well, I mean, I think what really drove me to come up with this bill is actually, it's quite ironic, because it was about helping women or men, or rather couples who are not able to conceive and have children. So I wanted to come up with a bill, have a legislative framework where we could have these IVFs and surrogacy. Because in my role as a representative of the people, over time I have come across a lot of couples who this was not available to them, or even though it's there are no laws that govern it. It's so extremely expensive that only the very wealthy in the society are able to access. So when I initially brought this bill, I realized even though the Constitution is very clear, everybody's entitled to reproductive healthcare, there was no standalone bill or law, rather, for that. So I wanted to plug in a gap that was there. So it's ironic because when I brought up the bill, what I really wanted to do was help those families that were not able to have families. And in our African context, when a woman is not able to conceive or a family are not able to have a baby, then they are looked down upon. It's looked as though it's not a totally... it's
not a complete
unit,
You're stigmatized.
Exactly. Yeah. But now the naysayers and the propagandists have now taken away and called it an abortion bill, which now is about ending life, while really my issue was about bringing life. So that's why I'm saying it's ironic, but we shall get to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a section of that bill that addresses that, and this is about people who are not able to conceive and how they can be assisted into getting children.
Right.
And then now there are these other, shall we call them nyongezas?
Yes.
Some simple branches that have come, and they appear to be the ones that are spoiling the original intention.
Yes.
Well, we shall be discussing all those in detail, and going into that, I think we'll start with that from the intention of what you wanted to discuss, and then why you thought to include these other issues about the abortion, about bringing in adolescents, about training them on sex. Why it is
not training them on sex, but we shall come back on that.
See?
Okay, it's already coming out.
Eric,
no, we can't do that.
You see? All right, let's take a break and take a look at traffic, because you're coming to the top of the hour. As we do that, CT Muga, what is today's proverb?
It's from Nigeria. Simple and easy to understand. However far the stream flows, it never forgets its source.
However far it flows, never forgets where it came from. Okay, interesting one. This is the Situation Room, broadcasting on Spice FM and also online on www.spicefm.co.ke and also on KTN Home. In the room with us this morning is Nakuru Senator Susan Kihika. She is the author of the Reproductive Health Care Bill 2019. It has been called very many other things. The abortion bill, the what else bill? Everything else bill.
Everything but reproductive
But what
health.
it was supposed to be, reproductive health. And you just give us an introduction of what you were thinking when you were drafting this bill initially. And you were thinking of the assisted reproduction bit. What's the issue there?
You find that there are many couples, and in fact I was talking to some, as we continued with our public participation, I was talking to some of the religious leaders, and I was saying, I'm sure if you could be candid, you would be able to tell us that thousands upon thousands of couples come to you for prayers when they are unable to conceive, or they are unable to carry, a lady is unable to carry a pregnancy, or maybe the whatever the medical issues may be. It could be the lady, and sometimes it could also be the gentleman. But what we have found, as I was saying, is within our African context or our African culture, when two people come together, get married, and are unable, maybe 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, to conceive, then it becomes problematic. So a lot of the women then came to me, and they were like, it leads to such low self-esteem because you're looked down upon, or you are looked at as not being a real woman, whatever that may mean. And you know, looking back in the Bible, it's not a new concept. It's nothing new here. You know, when we talk about Abraham and Sarah, we know there was an issue. I mean, she had to wait until she was 90 years old to be able to conceive. So we are saying that the Lord has helped us with get technology and science going. And we use that for even as we do when we are ill, we go to the hospitals and we get treated. So it's nothing really here unique or new. It's just advancement in science and technology that has helped. So why not use that in our context and then be able to help these people be able to conceive and have children? And when you look around in this Nairobi, actually, there is a lot of fertility clinics. That's what they call them. But there's not a single law in the books that governs how they carry out these services. And by the way, I'm now coming to learn a lot of the services are actually accessed by foreigners and others because our local women are not able to access affordably. So that is what really, that was what made me bring about this bill. However, you did ask me, why then did you throw in all the other things? Now, like I said, there is no law, there is no standalone law on reproductive health in the country. So then I decided to come up with a comprehensive law on it based on what we already have in different laws, in the Constitution of Kenya, in the Health Act, in different educational policies. So pull all that together, because really you can't talk about reproductive health and not talk about, say, family planning, for example. You can't talk about reproductive health and not maybe include the little abortion that's already the law of the land, you know, those sorts of things. So what I did then was, instead of just coming up with a law on surrogacy, that's where maybe the couple's eggs are fertile, but the lady cannot carry to full pregnancy. Maybe they keep miscarrying. And I think you've heard of these stories.
Yep.
Then instead of just having that, why not come up with a very comprehensive law that covers all the different areas maybe you can think of, hopefully, and it's not just ladies, it's women, men, girls and boys are able to then access. And that really was what drove me to do this, to put it together. But within no time, the hula baloo, okay, we've also seen a rise in teenage pregnancies. So I know some people say that, okay, what a coincidence that the minute you had your bill, we started seeing numbers rising and inflated. And I said, well, that comes from a point of misinformation. Because you have to understand, our bills, by the time we are getting to this stage of second reading, it's been almost a year in the process, in the pipeline. So this bill was actually published back in November of 2019. We had the first reading in the Senate in February of 2019. We had public participation, which is required under the Constitution, in March of 2020. Sorry, the first reading was February of 2020.
This year,
public participation happened, where a lot of the stakeholders that we are now hearing also came and brought their views and their proposals. That was back in March of 2020. We then had the second reading, which is sort of one of the major steps in the bill. It went through the process, it went to the Senate, and the senators voted for it. That was the second reading back in June. And now we were going for the third reading when something, I don't know, somebody just woke up somewhere and decided, wait a minute.
Somebody realized what you were doing.
Exactly. Well, it wasn't hidden. It was on the floor of the house. Yeah.
It touches on so many things, Senator Kihika. It touches on, you know, what information parents, religious leaders want out there for their youth or for younger people. We know that, you know, teenage pregnancy, we would want to pretend that it has not been there, but it has been there for very many years. We've seen a spike because of current conditions or whatever that may be. Now, what would be the intention of this bill in terms of information spreading for these young people?
Now, and I'll read it right off the bill, because when sometimes I hear the misinformation, one, I'm wondering 2 or 3 things must be happening. One, either people are discussing the bill without having the advantage of having read it, one, or there is a deliberate misinformation. Sometimes maybe because I'm a politician, there has to be some maybe political agenda or propaganda put in there. So there's so many things going on. But one, I would want to ask anybody and everybody who can, please get a copy of the bill and just read it. You can even get me on my social media and I forward to people. That's what I do all day long, just so that I can get it out there. But what addresses, first, let me be very, very clear. My bill does not, as a solution to teen pregnancies, does not then recommend abortion, because I think that's what I'm hearing. I've seen some people on TV pushing that or saying that's what the bill is saying. No. What my bill recommends for us to be able to maybe help, even if not all of them, some of them, so that we can avoid getting to that very far point of pregnancy. We need to help before pregnancy, rather. So what my bill does, in Part 7 of my bill, Clause 32, on the adolescent-friendly reproductive health care services, my bill says age-appropriate, meaning a 10-year, you're probably not going to talk to a 10-year-old the same way you will talk to a 16-year-old. Because a 16-year-old, when we were 16, we knew a little more than when we were 12, you know, and vice versa. So my bill recommends mentorship programs. For example, yourself, you would be a very good mentor to some of the girls out there. You know, so maybe, and I was going to say, and I'm sure you already are. So we encourage that. And if each of us can do a little, even if you are just a mentor to one girl, it would make the world of a difference, you know? And then myself to one, yourself to, you know, like just like that. I think that would cause a chain reaction that would be very helpful for our girls. Because some of the times when I speak to them, they don't have anybody to talk to or to look up to, or they just have their peers, which sometimes could be problematic. So mentorship programs, spiritual and moral guidance. One, first of all, I am a Christian, first of all. You know, just... let's get that out of the way. You know, because some people act like you can't be a politician and a Christian. By the way, we are both. And most of us are both. And we have Muslims and other religious, other different religions. But I want you to understand that the context of this bill also takes into account our religious background. So here I put spiritual and moral guidance, counseling on abstinence. We are telling our girls, wait, just wait. You know, there will be time for that. Do your education, get to 18, 21, then maybe engage in those things. But for now, just wait, abstinence. Consequences of unsafe abortion, because it's happening. So we are trying to say in the bill, we offer counseling on if you go ahead and go down that route, you could die. You know, those are the consequences that could happen. And I know a lot of people felt we should not have had counseling on unsafe abortion, but maybe on abortion. And I was like, that is why we have public participation. I don't feel very strongly about it. I could change it to consequences on abortion. Because really my intention is I want us to not get to the abortion. Let them be so cancelled before that they have abstained or they have taken care of themselves, so that we are now not talking about abortion, so that we don't get there. Really, it is about life. In addition,
that's where the issue comes up. The word unsafe. Right? If we're talking about unsafe, then you'll also have to say because they are safe abortions.
And you know, we'll get to that because the Constitution of Kenya, Article 26, gives exceptions to the right to life. So there is times where abortion is accepted, it's the law of the land,
Yep.
where maybe the life of the mother is in danger. So there are those exceptions, and I do want to take that away from it because it is in the Constitution. The people of Kenya passed it. However, like I said, I am not stuck on unsafe. For me, if that would make the bill more acceptable, then so be it. Let's have counseling let's tell these girls. We have seen, I think we saw on the Sonko rescue team like 2 days ago, some fetuses that were being collected somewhere. The other day in Nairobi River when it was being, so it's happening.
Yep.
So these girls need to understand, we don't want you to get to that point, but we are going to have to salvage them before we get there. Okay, counseling on sexually transmitted infections and HIV AIDS. I mean, those are things we should really be counseling our children on.
Yep.
Maybe they don't understand that those things are out there. Right. So I thought that was important. In addition to that, counseling on substance and drug abuse. And by the way, you see these, all those that I have already spoken about. By the way, it's nothing new. I'm not a genius. I didn't come up with them. They already exist in different policies within the government. So it's just bringing them together in this legal framework. In addition to that, we thought it was important to also have training in livelihood and life skills. Because some of our youths, maybe that is what they need to be able to be busy and not engaging in these things. Vocational training as well. And also such other health services the cabinet secretary shall determine. So, and I know there was a lot of heat as well on that because people felt, well, what if the cabinet secretary came up one day and just inserted something that's unacceptable that was not part of this?
Is it the wording of it?
What, the wording?
Yes.
Maybe perhaps, and that's what I'm saying. But we're having a discussion, and that's what should happen. Because also people need to realize, before the cabinet secretary can come up with any regulations, any policy, and any of that, the law requires they must come back to you, the people.
Yep.
They must have public participation. And if you say no, then they're not going to. So it's not something they can just wake up and sleep up there and just
But you see, with that phrase, what came to my mind and why people would react to it is they would imagine exactly that the cabinet secretary has a dream and then the following morning allows the country to enjoy the benefits of this dream.
Yeah.
Perhaps if the cabinet secretary, upon the advice of his health, whatever, reproductive experts, you see, if there is no clear indication that whatever the cabinet secretary is saying is upon the advice, you see, many people may think, well, it's obvious. It's obvious to me. It's obvious to you. But not many people understand that these statements that the cabinet secretary makes are actually based on a lot of advice that he has received from a lot of people.
And that's why I'm coming back and saying, one, by the way, after the second reading, which is what we've already gone through, as we speak right now, it's at the committee stage, which means those are the views we get. And really, probably this is what should be happening on all laws that are being made in this country, where we can hear from so many different stakeholders and be able to use that to make the bill better. But I also want you to understand, the cabinet secretary cannot just wake up and put his dream on paper in there, insert it in there. They have to do public participation. They have to come back out to the stakeholders.
And there are other safeguards in law and the Constitution to ensure that the cabinet secretary does not.
But I also hear what you're saying. Right.
Is it public knowledge?
And I think that's what we are doing now.
Now.
We need to start now educating our people or making sure civic education is necessary. So because it's not, like you're saying, I really think it's not public knowledge. People don't know that you can't just wake up.
But do something like that. People actually don't know. But Susan, why do you think?
Sorry, before I finish that, just one last thing.
Yes.
In addition to that, one very, very important point I think is important. Clause 33, which is the following clause, states that in the provision of adolescent-friendly reproductive healthcare services, a healthcare, now on all those things that I've read, a healthcare provider shall obtain parental consent. So you are not counseling my kid on abstinence if I have not given permission for you to do so. Right. Does that make sense? Because I know people are saying, oh, okay, so now you want our 10-year-olds out. No. You as a parent will be involved because you must give consent for that to happen. Yes. So there's a role of the parent as well.
Why do you think all of this? I mean, because, like you say, public participation taken into consideration. Why do you believe this has touched such a raw nerve with the uproar that you saw then coming out of this?
Because I think, and maybe I'm wrong, and I said again, there was misinformation from the word go. The first pressers that we saw, really, I even wondered, did they have a different copy of the reproductive health care bill than the word that I have in the Senate. Because maybe, I mean, you know, we do have some very smart kids out there. Maybe they had doctored it out there in the social media sphere, and maybe they were reacting to something. Because a lot of what we had really, and I had some meetings with a few of them later, and I say, can you point out to me where in my bill, whatever you are referring to would be? And they are like, okay, we didn't read it.
Who do you think sparked that particular flame? Which group of people?
I don't know. Let me just say.
I would place it at the doorstep of our religious organizations.
For the religious organizations, I think they generally mean well, but sometimes they are misinformed.
There is a saying that the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
True.
You see, look, if we just read that 32, just the way it is written, it sounds okay. And it sounds okay because it is not introducing anything new. It is basically just bringing in information that we already know, what all these things the church is already doing. The church does counseling on all these matters. Religious organizations do counseling on all these matters. And this is where now your aerial goes up. Because you wonder, so why would this legislator just pick what is obvious, put it here? So where is the hidden clause? So where is the detail? The devil is always in the detail.
And I think that's what you're being conditioned to think, that there's something beyond what is in the bill. And I said to somebody, if then you say that, we can then argue that about anything. Then we can say anything has a hidden agenda. And like you said, you picked something out and you're like, maybe the wording there should be changed. And that's the conversation we should be having. If there's something that they're uncomfortable with, because you rightly put it, everything here, by the way, and that's why I said it's not rocket science. I'm not a genius.
Madam
It's
Senator.
stuff I have pulled out. 1 minute. If you look at the ones on counseling on sexually transmitted infections and HIV/AIDS, that already exists in Adolescent Sexual and Reproductive Health Policy of 2015. And as well as the NACADA policies and all that, yeah?
Yep.
There is also the Education Policy on HIV and AIDS of 2013. So when we look at a lot of these things, like you said, it's not you posed a good question. Why then am I putting it here if it already exists in different places? Because it's already, like we said, that's just a policy. It's not a law that is in one place where if I'm a teenager and I need this, or a parent of a teenager and I need my teenager to get this, what really are what are they able to access? What's out there? And when you say the church is doing that, and I commend the church for doing that, and we want them to continue doing that, what about those teenagers who maybe are not going to church or are not comfortable talking to their pastor about those issues, you know, because let's also be honest and talk about it freely. You know, there are some, I wasn't able to talk to my mother about these things. I don't know, maybe you were.
Well, no, now, maybe.
Maybe now.
Forget about it. You're not having a conversation on Mrs. Oko at 18 years old.
Exactly. Or even at 16, you know. So I think it's necessary that we become alive to what is happening. And I want to be very categorical. There is nothing hidden. What you're seeing is what you're getting. But I'm also saying where people feel strongly, maybe this wording, like we said on the unsafe, we'll take it out, no big deal. I would rather we carry as many of you along and have a proper Reproductive Health Care Act than not have anything at all.
Are there sections of this law? You see, this is one small section that's talking about adolescents. And it goes ahead and prescribes what the national government and the county government should do is ensure that these children have access to all this counseling and information. And then there are other parts of the law that deal with other matters. For example, they talk about promoting sexuality. They talk about, it's going to discuss abortion and discussing abortion for a bit. Do you think this is where those who are against this bill are saying, all right, yeah, you have mentioned very nice things here about the adolescents. But if we look at it in totality, the other parts of the law are not saying this shall be exclusive to adults, but it's a person shall. And this is where the issue of what they are talking about. This bill is promoting sex for pleasure.
Can I first ask you to point out?
If we start teaching our children that
I think he's talking about perception.
Sex is for pleasure.
Yes,
this is wrong.
Perception.
Okay, but I would want to...
Where would they get that from?
You know what? I cannot talk to you or explain to you why a person would think the way they want or the way they are thinking. Because I'm not in their mind.
I can actually help you there.
But 1 minute. However, I think, like I said, it's the way it was framed initially. And you know what? I always say, when you want to kill a dog, you give it a bad name. Okay? So this bill, there were those who are hell-bent on just killing it from the word go. And what would be the best way to kill it? Just give it a bad name. Just come up with things that are insane, basically. First of all, in my bill, the only parts that refer or give these services to adolescents is that Part 7, Section 32 that we just read.
Yeah.
However, like I said, it does not exist in a vacuum. Part of the other parts that you're talking about, where maybe people felt like I should have said an adult and instead of saying every person is able. I am also going with what is in the Constitution, and I'm going to read it for you. Under Article 43 of the Constitution of Kenya, it states every person has the right to the highest attainable standard of health, which includes the right to healthcare services, including reproductive health care. You see, so the Constitution already sets that out. So when we come, and I know where you're going, and I want to demystify that.
I don't even know where I'm going.
Remember, you asked me that I have to think where, and I'm trying to think where you're going.
Yes.
Anyway, because I wondered to myself, why would whoever it was that I saw on TV, talking about, I'm saying 10-year-olds can be able to have sex, where the hell would they get that from? Because for sure it's not in the bill.
But Senator, they're having it anyway, and this is
no. But that's not in my bill. Let's be
honest. Senator,
I understand.
It's not in your bill.
It doesn't have to be in the
your
bill.
bill isn't even in contention here. Believe me.
It's not that. But look at the perceptions around all of this right now, and this is what I think the meat of it is, and this is why I'm coming from to say that unfortunately we are dealing with situations where people actually don't want to take cognizance of the reality that is on the ground. These things are happening anyway, as painful as it is to say, because yes, I come in contact with 8, 9, 10-year-olds who are engaging in sexual activity. It is happening as we speak. There are 9-year-olds who are pregnant. There are 10-year-olds who are pregnant.
Madam Senator,
it's happening as we speak.
Would you say that the lived experience of most Kenyans are, one, a complete trust in their political leaders? That's one. Two, an open-mindedness where sexual matters are concerned.
Okay. Sorry.
Yes,
very good question. No, because I think you had asked that, and I sort of had an answer. You were saying, why is it such a big deal?
So raw? Yeah.
And already, like you said, most of these are already the law. So what is this that is already, what is leading to this hula baloo? One, like you said, and you said it in other words, we don't want to talk about sexual...
Madam Senator, ordinarily, we as Africans don't discuss sex.
Right.
Okay?
Well, I was trying to say it that way. I think you said it
Don't
best.
go even into the law, the bill, the constitution. Most people don't really care what the
But is it happening,
says.
or do Africans not have sex?
Hey,
How did we get here?
I don't know.
What are we talking about?
The thing is,
you don't discuss everything you do.
No,
so
and
But
also
here we are not even discussing sex. We are just talking about reproductive health care.
Actually, that's really the point. We are discussing sex.
Okay.
You cannot talk of reproduction without sex being at the back of your mind. So what you hear is, and this is good because you then get to understand how different people perceive sex. For the longest time, I still do in the field of research. And the greatest hindrance to any reproductive health matters, HIV, AIDS, we found out was not the individual who sought the help, but the healthcare giver. Because they brought their mindset and their understanding and their beliefs and the perception to them to work. Now, this is what you're hearing.
Now, the senator needs to respond to those two questions. Because you're the one who asked the questions.
Yes.
He was doing well at also answering them.
I need to give the senator a break.
This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on Spice FM and KTN Home. It's right now in the committee stage before it goes to the final third reading. And it's either accepted or rejected. However, we are at the stage where we have seen a lot of reaction, especially from religious leaders. The evangelical Christians have come out and they've said they oppose various aspects of this bill. One, it seems to be promoting sex amongst young people. And also the Muslim cleric have also come out and they have opposed a number of things about it, including some provisions on pornography. But we shall get into those questions. Before we do that, not pornography, sorry,
Whoa.
No, it's because somebody had talked about pornography in the calls. It's provision on abortion.
Shock us now, won't you?
Jesus Christ.
Big one.
There we go.
No, there was that caller. There was that caller
Like,
who referred to this magazine called True Love and a Drum, and he related it to pornography at an earlier time.
There was actually a caller from
Cliffy.
No, the other guy who had talked about yesterday. He was giving out some condoms to young people, Masiga in
and
Chuka,
the young people,
and he found them
watching,
consuming pornography and
Wow,
pornographic content. Anyway, that's not it. Two questions that you had asked. One is about people and their trust for political leaders.
I call it their lived experience, with the politicians.
Number two,
and then sex.
sex is not something we discuss.
Right. Absolutely. Let me begin with that of the political leaders. I think, and I might not be wrong, and I'm sorry to all my colleagues listening, the world over. It is not. It's not specific to Kenya.
Okay.
It seems just politicians are not very
Trustworthy
very liked,
human
I
beings.
suppose. Yeah,
Believable.
Maybe. Perhaps maybe we've said this and done this. I don't know. But however, I also say with the rider there and with humility, we are also a reflection of you, because you elect us. You know, we don't get into our office by ourselves. So we are a reflection of the people who elect us. What are you trying to say now?
We are saying that there's a silent treaty we had here and you're breaking it.
Yeah.
Okay, sour.
Go on.
So it's unfortunate. On that one, I will accept. Sometimes as leaders,
would you be so kind
politicians-
as to relate this to the Kenyan politician? Okay. We thank you for the world view. Now, Kenyan.
I mean, so what I'm saying is Kenya is not, it's not unique. Politicians are not necessarily the most liked persons. Our job is hard sometimes.
The politician playing her trade well.
No, I'm just saying,
avoiding the question. But
okay.
She's the lawyer, she's the politician.
But, and maybe it's with good reason. And that's why I say I wouldn't also be too hard on you, because maybe it's with good reasons. Because maybe sometimes we've said this,
Okay.
preached what? Water and drank wine, or, you know, or vice versa, whatever. So, but don't also throw away the baby with the bathwater. So it may be a politician's role also is legislative. So unless we also, as much as you may not like us, we are the ones who make...
It isn't like, actually, it's trust.
Trust, as much as you don't trust.
I may like you, but I don't trust you.
Oh, and that's fair.
It goes down to the
That's
intention.
fair. Intention, maybe.
Like we were saying earlier, so you may have come up with this and you have really sugar-coated it so well. But then, and we have seen this before, especially in Kenyan politics, that bills are sponsored by interest groups, not just Kenya, it's global. So what interest group is it that is pushing this bill?
Can I tell you something? Categorically, on air, now that I have the opportunity, nobody but Susan Kihika came up with this bill. Nobody is sponsoring me, because I have heard that, again, it's back to, if you want to kill a dog, you just give it a bad name. I have had that thrown out there.
Yep.
But I want to be categorical. Nobody is sponsoring me. No one has sponsored me, and I have not gotten a penny from anybody. So this is, and you know, then you could say that about any bills. We have thousands of bills any year going through the system. It is easy to say that just to make it appear as though I'm carrying somebody's agenda. And I did tell you, I told you at the beginning, I started with these IVF and surrogacy things because of issues with our couples. And I also challenged even the religious leaders. Are they not praying for many families who have been unable to have children?
It's a reality.
It is a reality.
We are living with.
So sometimes I also say, and sometimes I back to the Bible, I think I'm an Esther. I think I am made for a time such as this. This was not a bill that somebody who has a soft skin would be able to do from what I have heard, from the harassment, from the blatant lies, from the propaganda and everything. But at the same time, it may not be very like like an ice cream with a cherry on top, kind of soft, nice looking package here bill. It is one of those harder ones, but with a very intentional purpose, because we have our families, not just now on the IVF and surrogacy, on this reproductive health, on this family planning, for example, on these teenage or teen pregnancies issues that we are seeing, and having something that addresses those issues. So yes, it is easier because in our African context, we don't talk about sex, like you said, and reproductive health.
Actually, I asked the question, and I'm waiting for you to respond.
That's where I'm going now.
Okay. Thank you.
It is easier to not even have this sort of a bill because already in our African context, this is so taboo or it's so uncomfortable. Yet, I mean, I want to say it's the reality. We do need reproductive health care it's actually guaranteed
There's
in the Constitution.
Else here,
girls do have their monthly periods every month. People, if they have, no, I'm getting shy now. If people have sex, they also lead to pregnancies. You know, so these are the realities. We may not want to talk about it, but it is the reality. And I see you're already blushing. But that is the conversation that needs to be had. My bill does not, by the way, in any way, shape, or form, promote any underage sex. In fact, first, by training, I'm a lawyer. Second, I am big on when somebody had the nerve to talk about, I think a couple of years ago, that we should lower the age of consent from 18 to, I think, 16. I was one of the ones who very strongly came out and opposed that. In fact, I wish we could raise it to 21. We just can't. So let there not be, no, 18, 18 by our law, 18 is when now you are an adult. So let us not also infringe on the rights of the 19 or the 20-year-olds. But that is the direction I would go. I'm a mother of 2 girls. And so when we talk about the adolescent services here, they're specified in my bill. You may think of all those things out there. You may want to say, okay, maybe she's saying family planning for everyone. But the rights, the access, the services that will be available to adolescents are they're specified. They're specified, okay?
You know, Madam Senator,
City, let's take a break, a short one, because I want to hear from Erica Aloch, who's been holding on the line. I think she wants to ask Madam Senator a question. Erica, good morning.
Let's listen, yes.
Good morning.
Yep.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for taking my call. I'll just make it brief. I have 2 questions. Senator Kihika, first of all, First of all, how many schools have you personally, schools, universities, whatever, have you personally gone to educate these kids on your bill and what it is you're trying to say? You know, we're not talking about these political propagandas or saying I'm doing community work. On a personal effort, how many schools and universities have you actually gone to since this bill was passed? And the other one is, of course, I appreciate what it is you're trying to do with your bill, but as you've already pointed out, these are not new things. These are things that churches have always talked about. Schools also have these same regulations and guidelines for us. So what are you doing that is different that will make this message get through? Because there's nothing new. So is it just to have a bill so that you can say you have a bill? Because these are things that exist. So what are you doing that is different that will actually, send a message home?
Thank you, Erica.
Do I respond first?
Yes.
Or you're taking another one?
Okay,
sorry, what's that? Erica.
Erica.
Good morning, Erica, and thank you for those questions. I think it's one, but with a few others in there. One, I have not personally gone to any schools or universities because I have done what the law requires when you come up with a bill, which is advertised in the national newspapers for a public participation, which we did back in March. It was in the Standard or the Nation, and it advertised, and a lot of the people who were concerned or who had opinions or memorandas came and presented that there, which is what now goes to the committee, which is what they're considering right now. Because some would say, remove this, add this, don't word this way, put it this way. That's what we are doing right now. So personally, I have not gone to schools or universities to educate them on this, because really that is not the intention here. The intention here is to do it in the proper way that the law requires me to do it. Because if then I had to visit every school and every university, then I'm sure that would
time
and everything else. So that time would not permit that. However, we do now have a lot of the younger people participating in a lot of the discussions I'm having, be it online, be it in smaller meetings. Some have also been set up by other people who I don't even know, but I just see them online and all that sort of stuff. So I know they're in the conversation. And like she said, she also talked about why am I doing this? Well, it's already being taught. Some of this is already being done by the religious leaders, as well as being in the school guidelines and all those sorts of things. One, like I said, not necessarily every child is able to access or hear this information from the religious leaders. One, they just may not be going to church, or maybe they are not, they don't go to church, or maybe they're just not comfortable speaking with their, my mother's priest. I may not be very comfortable because I do not know if later they will discuss that with my mother, whatever, I don't know.
But
I'm
counseling is happening in
many areas.
Yeah.
So we want to encourage, and that's why we also put in the bill that spiritual and moral guidance. So we want to encourage the church to do that, because nobody alone, and the clergy and the Muslims, nobody alone can do it, but if it's done in different spaces, then it really helps. And those who are not comfortable going through that in the church may be comfortable going through it in school or with the healthcare professional, that sort of stuff.
So what about this bill, Senator, is going to make this thing work this time? Like Erica was saying, well, we've had this thing for a long time.
Yeah, in fact, let me finish her last question. She said it's already there are regulations and guidelines. Why do I need to have a bill just to have a bill? Let me just let Erica know. Regulations and guidelines do not equal an act of parliament. They do not equal the law of the land, so to speak. And a guideline or a regulation can just be pulled. One morning, they can just wake up and pull it and say this is no longer what we now have or whatever, what we shall be going with. Yeah. But to change a law, you can't just wake up and just change the law. You either have to go to court and make it and get it made unconstitutional or illegal, whatever, or you have to go back to parliament and get an amendment, that sort of thing. So it's difficult. And so that's why we want to have a law, just like we have the Constitution, just like we have the Healthcare Act, just like we have many other laws. We want to have the Reproductive Healthcare Act if it passes, I hope.
Okay. I've got to ask this question, and this is because it's one of the things that you're getting pushback on. Termination of pregnancy.
Sure.
The Constitution has talked about when abortion can happen. And those are two instances. You've introduced a third. And this third one is, let me just read the bill itself.
Yeah, please.
26.1, a pregnancy may be terminated by a trained health professional where, in the opinion of the trained health professional, A, there is need for emergency treatment, B, the pregnancy would endanger the life or health of the mother, or C, there exists a substantial risk that the fetus would suffer from a severe physical or mental abnormality that is incompatible with life outside the womb. C.
Sure. Let's talk about C, right?
C is where now the issue arises.
First of all, like we said, when we first come up with the bill, and what you're reading is the initial draft of what is the bill, like as I came up with. But over time, it will get some things changed a bit, some things deleted even, and that sort of stuff. And I want to explain to you why even I proposed we delete C. But I want to explain to you why C was on the bill initially. Now, if you look at the Constitution, Article 2.6 of the Constitution is very clear. It talks about that's the supremacy of the Constitution. Any treaty or convention ratified by Kenya shall form part of the law of Kenya under this Constitution, right? So treaties out there that have been ratified then become part of our law. Now, I do quite a bit in the arena of women's rights and all those sorts of things, So under that, there is a convention which Kenya ratified back in 1984. And that convention is the CEDAW. And CEDAW is really the Convention on Elimination of Discrimination against Women. And that is where it allows for termination if like now the language of C, where there exists a substantial risk that the fetus would suffer from a severe physical or mental abnormality that is incompatible with life outside of the womb. Those are the ones who
is contained in the CEDAW.
In the CEDAW, right. However, after we had drafted and we were going through this now because I have also lawyers within Senate who help with this sort of research and everything. We also came across another convention, another treaty, which Kenya has also ratified. And that is the Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And this was against, just like it says, Convention on Rights Against Persons with Disabilities. So when that CRPD came, when I came now to learn of the CRPD, I knew of the CEDAW, but I was not aware of the CRPD. Then we thought, in light of the conflict of these two international treaties, we reconsidered as a secretariat. We reconsidered and even recommended to the committee that we shall be moving to delete C, just because there's a conflict in in the conventions. However, just to be clear, it was not just on disability, but it was where the doctor had determined this child cannot live outside the womb. And that happens sometimes. And I wish we had a doctor in the panels here. But in light of the conflict in international conventions, then I moved to delete part C. So now on the part on termination of pregnancy, it will mirror to the comma, to the dot, what the Article 26 of the Constitution gives as far as the exception to the right to life, which is abortion is not permitted unless, in the opinion of a trained health professional, there is need for emergency treatment or the life or the health of the mother is in danger. So, and that is also what is in the Health Act. So that is what we shall have in the bill.
There's also this other part, 27(1), that a trained health professional who has a conscientious.
I also can't say
this
that
one. It's in the oath, and you keep.
I kept saying
conscientiously.
Eric, why are you wading into my
conscientious? Consensus.
We are the ones who have license
consensus
to mix and mingle our S and SHs.
So, a trained health professional who has a conscientious objection to the termination of a pregnancy as envisaged under this act shall, except in case of emergency treatment, refer the pregnant woman to a trained health professional who is willing to provide this service. Now, what service would that be? We have already said that if, in the opinion of this trained health professional, the life of there's emergency, it requires an emergency, or the life of health of the mother is in danger, why would a doctor then be given leeway to feel, in my conscience, abortion is not something that I do, and then you must send this woman to somebody else?
And by the way, that's a good one that you have raised, because it's one, like we've talked about, with different clauses, I mean, with different sections, different clauses, different stakeholders have an issue with that. And this is one which now we are trying to reward. I'm glad you have reward it so that the doctors feel comfortable, because I have had a lot of the doctors complain and felt that this could open them up for criminal prosecution. So let me explain to you what the reasoning was behind this clause. We felt that after being told that there are times in this country, or there are times when a woman's life is in danger, but the doctor feels they do not believe and cannot therefore perform that termination. Then we felt we are weighing here, it's whether to save a life
or to go with the
doctor's rights, and we recognized, and I recognize the rights of the doctor to have to also go with his conscience, but at the same time we have a mother's life that is in danger. So we said then, fine, we shall respect your right to your conscience. However, her life is also important. So then what you need to do is refer her to person B who does not have that same objection, so that her life can be saved. So that was the reasoning behind it. But it's still one of the ones that we are having to maybe redraft, because the doctors feel that the way it's phrased, especially with part 2, where if a trained professional does not refer, who does not refer as specified under subsection 1, commits an offense. Because now we had instances where maybe a mother dies. The mother dies because the doctor felt very strongly, I do not believe I can terminate this pregnancy. Fine. Then I'm saying I'm respecting your right to your conscience. Your right that is guaranteed under the Constitution. However, this woman's life now must also be important.
So you have an obligation.
To then refer, because I'm sure they know who does what. And many women, by the way, die while giving birth, or even in the course of pregnancy.
Okay. Senator Kihika, I think it's very important, even as we look at the nitty-gritty around, wording and, public participation and all of this, what would it look like? Should this bill pass, right? And then it becomes part of law. What would it look like? What would be then the provisions made for reproductive health care in this country? Sometimes it may look a little bit better when we really understand how things then would actually change, or who would be protected, and what things then people would have access to.
Paint us a picture of Nirvana.
Perfect. Oh, yes.
This bill passes.
Yes.
What do we expect to see?
I hope it passes, and eventually I'm hopeful that when the committee has done what... Oh, okay. When the committee has done what it needs to do in the next few weeks or so, a part of which is they will also be doing just another round of public participations.
Right.
Just because, like you said, so much people seem to not be knowing really what is in the bill, but also us wanting to carry as many people along as possible, the religious organizations, the religious leaders, our teenagers, our mothers, our fathers, our sisters and brothers. We just want to carry everybody along, and the professionals as well. So once that is done and we have a bill, it will still have to go through the same process again in the National Assembly, where they have to do the first reading, the second reading, public participation, third reading, and then now it becomes a bill. So I am hopeful that we shall get to that point. And when that happens, you asked, what is it that we are going to see when this happens? One, beginning with my what I was passionate about here, we shall now have county governments as well as national governments having being able to have we're not asking them to build new clinics or new hospitals, but having more resources towards reproductive health, so that when our women, our men, our boys and girls need to access these things, then they are more accessible, because right now even maybe where to go is a problem.
Right.
And now with that, with the government also adding more resources, the services also become cheaper, because then they are available now maybe at the county hospitals or whatever. One of the things, like I'd said, like the IVF and surrogacy, which are extremely expensive right now, beyond the affordability for most of those who really need that help right now. With this bill passing, and with that passing, then we see the county government hospitals also probably being able to help with that sort of service. And with that, then the cost again comes down, and so a lot of our people are able to access, to have access to affordable and good quality reproductive healthcare services. If the bill passes, then we also are able to have our adolescent-friendly, age-appropriate services, where they are able to access this with parental consent, but where they are able to get those counselings that we talked about, those vocational trainings, those spiritual and moral guidance, those sorts of things. So I think it will streamline what is the reproductive health arena, so to speak. Yes, like we have had, there's guidelines, there's policies, there's word here and there's the Constitution as well, there's the Healthcare Act, but now we shall have a standalone act, a standalone law, where if you need this, then you can go to the law and be able to figure out what are your rights, what are you able to access, what is out there, and what can you get. So it will make it easier. It will make it easy, and especially for our women. It's for everybody. Reproductive health care is for everybody, but the women and girls seem predominantly to be disadvantaged right now as things stand.
And as we come back to the original idea for the bill, the assisted reproduction, what's the picture going to look like, really, in terms of even just awareness, creation, in terms of everything in that whole sphere of people in their communities? Because we've got to look at, yes, these services may be provided, but how are we going to change people's perceptions towards this?
Well, like we said, like for right now, it's not even, there's no law to that governs that. So for example, if I am unable to carry a pregnancy and I'm a commissioning parent and I commission her, says she's my cousin, and I'm like, okay, please help me carry this pregnancy, and you're able to do it. Right now, because there's no law, you can also just have the baby and say, I'm going to keep the baby, and there's nothing I can do. Or halfway through, I can just tell you know what, forget about it, I changed my mind. You know, so we need a framework that will be able to regulate this, because it is happening, by the way. And that is the one thing that I also want you to get. It is not that it's not happening in Kenya. It is actually happening, but it's only available to the rich.
It's an elitist.
Yeah, it's an elitist thing, exactly. So now we'll be able to have subsidized or maybe much cheaper services, and our people will also, with the law being there also, it's not probably going to be as hidden as it is right now, where there is no law. So there will be a bit more access. And one of the other bigger things we didn't talk about, you realize right now you can go to the hospital and a doctor can sterilize you, and nothing happens. So the part of that is also banning that, unless you have consented to that, even if you are a mad woman, so to speak, with the word loosely used, and I apologize. You know, there's probably a better word for that. Because that's what some of the times they say, they're like, oh, okay, let's sterilize her, whatever. No, then you can't just do that, because these are human rights. You know, so that's already happening right now. So we need to be able to outlaw that unless there is consent. And I'm asking that myself, just asking, versus you as a doctor just getting in there and doing it. Because it's really crazy.
Whose consent will be sought?
Or
the consent of
if
the person, for example, if we're talking about somebody with a mental disability,
then whoever the guardian is, because
Okay.
obviously there is a guardian.
someone.
Yeah, but you can't just go in there as a doctor and just decide to do
make-
it.
make a
yeah,
decision
or
in that.
I have had a baby, you just go in there and tie my tubes or whatever.
Yep.
Do whatever you need to do without my consent. You sterilize me without my consent. Yeah.
Senator Susan Kihika, thank you very much for coming and giving us this kind of very open and honest, candid conversation. It's very interesting that we can discuss for a whole hour stuff that is important to the country.
True.
And not just tanga kieleweke.
Oh,
You know?
No, we're not
he
going
had to
there.
spoil it. You had to spoil
I
it.
was just saying.
Oh no!
putting it out there.
Whenever people hear that there's a politician who's going to a
They
media
think
house,
that,
they think,
and that's why I
okay,
really
it's just gonna
appreciated.
be-
And I came here panting because I ran down the road to make sure I was here for
Oh,
this
there you
conversation. I
go.
appreciate
Very
you all.
good.
Yeah.
So listen to today's proverb from CT Muga.
Thank you.
However far the stream flows, it never forgets its source. Since we're with a politician, it doesn't matter how long you've been a politician, you must always remember who gets you there. It is the wananchi.
Deep. It is deep.
And so your interest must always, first and foremost, be that of the wananchi.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Asante sana.
And thank you very much. And I appreciate you all.
Thank you so much.